Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're taking a hard turn from what was Shadow of the Conqueror. Well, maybe it's not that hard of a turn, all things considered. We're taking a hard turn from the potato shifter smut to Christian sci-fi YA romance. That is with The Heights of Perdition by C.S. Johnson, a book review. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. Two different ways to be featured are one with Lamwai, where it's the monthly prompt contest. I give you guys a prompt. You answer the prompt with a short story or a segment. Then on the first Monday video of the month, we read them here together. The second way is if you are an indie author and you have a book out there or a book coming out, submit your first chapter and your cover, and they will be read here on the channel, hopefully to help more readers find your book so that everybody can be happy and love your characters along with you, because that is the joy. That is the joy of other people reading your work, is going, I love that character. You're like, ah, me too. Ah. I'm still waiting for people to comment on Ralph and Casey. I love them, but nobody said anything. I love them, but I feel like it's gonna take having the third Bodymore book out there, since you get a lot more Casey, and then it's gonna take having Bodymore Zero out there, since it's gonna be all about them. And I'm so excited to work on Bodymore Zero. You don't even know how excited I am to work on that book and get to play with Casey and Ralph some more. But I digress. Sort of, though that is a great segue, where if you would like to check out any of my books for enjoyment, for roasting, just to support me, they're available anywhere that you get books. And there are also a couple other ways that you can support me down in the comments or in the description below, in case you like what I do. If you wonder how I pick the books that I'm going to review on this channel, I kind of just review whatever I'm reading. And if you wonder how I pick what I'm reading, it's kind of random, if you haven't noticed. I kind of just, if something comes across my dash, like whether it's on social media or it's sent to me or something, that's usually how. I say sent to me because The Height of Perdition was actually sent to me by a friend like a year ago, and then I only got to reading it this year. A year after he sent it to me. So there is that. But I do try to read books that I got a paperback of this, so there is that. But I do try to read books specifically if they fall into an interest of mine. Like I read the Dead Skin Mask after that author contacted me because I was interested in the idea, and then because I was interested in the author, I read his other book. But I don't promise to read books if people proposition me, because I don't want to, I know what I like, and I don't want to hurt anybody by doing what I do, which is just talking about my experiences with the books. So, anyway, The Height of Perdition. It was sent to me by a friend. Let's get into the summary, and then we'll get into the notes. As always, if you're interested in seeing this story for yourself, how it played out, and then having a discussion about it with your own experiences, I highly encourage you to pick up a copy so that we can talk the details, because I love talking about fiction and storytelling and all things related. With that said, it's synopsis time. The introduction begins with our main male protagonist, Exton. Oof. This is gonna be a rough one already, I can tell. I had the hardest time remembering Exton and area as I was typing my synopsis. I don't know why, the names were just a struggle. So introductions begin with Exton, a 24-year-old space pirate captain who is sitting at the window of his room, looking out at the Earth, lamenting his sister's wedding that is happening today. It's sad, but he says it's freeing. His sister Emery comes in, interrupting his thoughts. The siblings talk past each other as Exton remains emo-pouting and Emery's trying to pull him out of the devil's clutches. They discuss their father's death and just how alone Exton feels, especially now that his sister is going to be given to a new man. Exton still agrees to dance with his sister at her wedding in place of their father, while he says happiness isn't real, because he's a true emo. Emery disagrees with him on that, even though she says that the noble ecclesiastians, which are like the group of elders in in the colony would agree with him. Exton pouts more and he's like, I'm going to your wedding. Isn't that good enough? Geez, stop being such a nag. And if God wanted me to be married, he'd send me a woman already. But I don't want to be bossed around by a woman, so I'm fine being alone. I feel like we're already getting Facebook boomer energy here. So the scene closes with Exton considering the dictatorship known as the URS that is on Earth, and the incoming fight with them. Pulled out of his thoughts, he thinks, God's not just going to dump someone on the ship for me to fall in love with. Spoiler alert, God has like been throwing chicks at Exton and he's just been like, nah, no. Like, a lot of them. We find out later. Now we switch to the female lead of the novel and Exton's eventual love interest. Her name is Aerie St. Cloud. She's a 17-year-old and she's graduating from URS Basic Academy. We get a basic introduction to who she is and her perfect man friend Brock, who she describes as both predatory and protective. This section dumps information about the infamous space captain, Chainsword, who Exton is now impersonating as Chainsword's ghost because that was his father. We also learned that Aerie lives in an anti-capitalist dictatorship set up underneath New York City. After the ceremony, Brock tells Aerie how proud of her he is for her not losing her cool during the ceremony. He also says facts don't care about your feelings while describing how things need to remain fair among the ranks despite her personal family connections, i.e. her dad is the second in command of the dictatorship. So Brock is like, despite your dad's position, he can't just give you like all the stuff that you want and the positions that you want because we need to be fair. That's not really how stuff works, even in a dictatorship, especially in a dictatorship, but I digress. While talking, Brock finds out that Aerie defied her final assignment order from the academy. She gets pissed off at Brock when he tells her that her defiance is going to cost her the opportunity to go into the military academy. Aerie is legitimately like, I can't believe that you're such a bad friend that you would tell me the truth like this. How dare you? I'm gonna be in the military academy even if I didn't follow the rules. Honey, you're not going to military school for that. Especially not in a dictatorship. She storms off to go to her favorite hiding place on the surface called the Memory Tree. It's somewhere up in the city where she's not supposed to be. She visits with a little kitten that she's found there on the surface while sitting in the tree, and when she feels the rain, she heads back underground again. Back to Exton, his ship's approaching Earth now. He lectures his co-captain Tyler that he is in charge and he'll do whatever he wants regardless of what Tyler thinks. They're going to Earth for one reason, to devastate them. Tyler worries that this means Exton is going to want to use nukes, which is kind of weird that he doesn't know Exton or the ship well enough to know that they don't even have nukes on the ship, or that Exton or what Exton's plan actually is. He says, to devastate the enemy who won't comply, you break their hearts with the usual business. And Tyler's like, bro, your sister's worried about you. And Exton goes, bam, my heart has already been crushed. Don't worry about it. I'm already lost, bro. Emery enters just in time to tell Exton to stop being so dramatic, and also there's this girl named Alice with her who is kinda really romantically interested in because he's kind of a hottie. Exton rolls his eyes going, girls are so tiresome. They keep approaching me. Tell me, was he not complaining about how lonely he was in the last chapter he was featured in, and if God wanted him to be with someone, then he'd send a girl his way? I'm pretty sure God is like, here, girl, and Exton's just like, why am I so lonely? I don't know how else you can do this other than like sending a literal sign that says,
Exton, stop being a little bitch. Do you not see I'm sending you chicks?
So Exton dresses up as Chainsword in order to go and terrorize the URS. Emery doesn't approve of Exton's games, but he's like, if we don't stop them, then they'll keep hunting us down until they stop us. It's kind of weird because they're non-aggressive, so they're really just pulling pranks on the dictatorship and thinking that it'll make them stop hunting them. I don't know, it kind of sounds like a good way to get attention of a dangerous foe that can then kill you when you're not actually going to fight to the death, but that's just me. I'm not, a space captain pirate. So what would I know? Back to Aerie, and she's underground. People are hearing about whether or not they got into the military academy, and she's learning that she, in fact, did not get into the military academy because she defied the orders given to her by the state. That is kind of amazing. that she didn't realize that defying the state would mean she didn't get into the military. What do you think being in the military is? So she's upset by this and doesn't understand how she could possibly not get into military school. Frankly, she's lucky that the dictatorship didn't just throw her into a re-education camp immediately for defying orders. She goes on to argue with her dad about how her ideas were better than the state's and that he needed to talk to the officials so that she could get into the military academy even if she defied them. She's like, they still liked my work though. Even if I defied them, they liked my work. This isn't fair. Girl, we're dealing with the Christian girl boss over here. At a council decision meeting, Aerie argues with the state about how she deserves to be in the military academy, even if she defied orders, even if she is currently defying orders, arguing with her higher-ups right this second. They question putting her in re-education camp right then, but her father says, nah, re-education doesn't really work. How about we just stick her in the communications sector instead, where she can learn how to do a job, how to work with others, while also having some level of autonomy. Why are we talking about personal autonomy in a dictatorship? Why is the second in command of a dictatorship talking about personal autonomy? He should go into re-education camp just for that. This is dangerous, you guys. Does anybody in this story see how dangerous it is for the second in command of a dictatorship to be talking about personal autonomy and how their own methods don't work? They know that they to be fair, this council would know that they work, which would mean they would know that this guy is lying to them. So again, the second in command is part of like a family of defectors, basically. Aerie, being an obvious rebel who argued with the state and left her disciplinary meeting without saluting her superiors as she was supposed to do, she somehow gets a job in communications. And I'm going to credit that to girl boss armor and hashtag not my dictatorship. Adding to this, despite Aerie growing up in a dictatorship under the second in command, she has ideas of freedom somehow. She questions whether following orders can ever be fulfilling and how freedom leads to making your own choices. Her dad eventually catches up and calls her out on visiting the memory tree on the surface. Also, she's brought numerous cats underground before, and it always results in a lot of paperwork that her dad has to do for her. So she has a history of defiance that her dad knows about and has done nothing with, and somehow she hasn't gone to re-education camp like any times. That is the greatest look for the dictator's second. That is just the greatest look for the dictatorship's second in command. I'm a little flabbergasted. Even after being given a second chance, Aerie is still defiant and doesn't want to eat with her siblings or her father. She's also pouty because she probably doesn't get to go to the military ball now since she didn't get into military school, and there's no way that Brock is going to ask her to the ball since she didn't get into the military academy. After her dad leaves though, Brock appears and asks her to the ball anyway, so really that was never off the table. Aerie says that she'll go and ask her dad if she can go, then excuses herself to cry about how disappointed she is about not getting into military school. Now contemplating suicide, Aerie climbs the memory tree and falls asleep after having a pity party for herself about not getting into the academy because she defied the state constantly during her high school career. She deserved it though. It doesn't matter how much she defied the state, she deserved the position. Why? Because of who her father is? Like, that's legit, okay? That's a legit ego right there. Now, luck would have it that Exton's whole attack on the URS to put them in their place was literally uprooting a random tree in New York and sucking it into the pirate ship. They all live underground. I don't know what the importance of this specific tree is. I don't really remember being told there was any specific significance. It was just the memory tree. But apparently it's both important enough that they'll notice when it's taken, but also not important enough because there are no guards on it. So they hook a bunch of stuff to it and then just rip it out of the ground and then pull it into the spaceship and fly back into space. Of course, Aerie is still in the tree. And when they examine the tree when it's pulled onto the ship, Exton finds Aerie and he is immediately juicing, if you know what I mean. Aerie fights him off and is beating him, breaking his ribs with a kick as a 17-year-old botanist student until Exton's sister comes in and tranks her. Yes, the 24-year-old space pirate is losing to the 17-year-old graduate who's not even a soldier. Also, during the fight before Aerie passes out, Emery berates Exton for being a bad fighter in front of Aerie, you know, the enemy of their entire business. So that's great. And we're not even only dealing, and it also proves that we're not dealing with just one girl boss. We're dealing with two girl bosses, Emery and Aerie. I'm sorry, Exton, you're surrounded by girl bosses. So Aerie wakes up in the medical ward because Exton's ship doesn't have a brig to keep her in. Aerie's flustered as heck looking at the hotness that is Captain Exton, the rebel. And she's in her head thinking things could be worse than having a hot captor. They're talking for a bit and she gives her name to the pirate that is the enemy of her father. He also gives her his name freely. He also gives his name freely to a member of the dictatorship that he wants to destroy. I see absolutely no flaws in this storyline. Good thing it's a Christian book, so everyone is honest with no ill intentions unless they are the bad guy. That's how you know not to trust them. So the two of them argue about how terrible the URS is, since it teaches compliance and conformity, but Aerie is literally an example against the dictatorship they're hating on. Exton gives Aerie her cat back because the cat was also in the tree with her. She blushes at the thought that she could have been ravaged by now by this handsome devil of a captor. Oof, oof. And then Exton leaves. Back in his room, he's thinking about how messy it is, how lonely he is, and how perfect and beautiful Aerie is. My gosh, she is the one. He then goes to the biovid, which is kind of like a biodome on the spaceship, I think, and experiences some human feelings. A man named Reverend Thorn then comes in after having a meeting with the Noble Council of Ecclesia. He suggests they mentor Aerie to bring her out of the URS support delusion that she is clearly in. Exton argues against this guy, saying that there is no helping someone who is so stuck in their ways that you'd expect this to be exactly what a rebel group would want. You know, defect an insider, send them back so you can defect some more. What's the purpose of rebelling if you don't think that you can change anybody's mind? I guess all that's left is to wipe out the dictatorship, but you won't do that either because that's a bad thing. You just pull pranks on the dictatorship. So like, what is the goal here? You can't convince people and you can't kill people. So what are we doing here exactly, Exton? I need to know. Exton also gets jealous at the suggestion of Aerie spending time with anyone other than himself. Exton's frustrated with all the circumstances, hating on dictator Osgood again for killing his dad and thinking of revenge, which Reverend Thorn is disappointed at. He says that revenge is hard, it's why we should forgive, but Exton ain't forgiven his dad's killer. He wants to meet with the baddies to taunt them. Again, for what purpose? I don't really know. He's not really accomplishing anything, and he doesn't really seem that dedicated to murdering or to killing his father's killer. He just kind of says it, but he doesn't really act in any way that makes it look like he would follow through with killing his dad's killer. Back to Aerie sitting in the medical bay. She's mostly been left alone and is thinking of Exton when he walks in. He admits to thinking about her all the time, and she says that she wants to go home. Instead, Exton says that she will stick around the ship and learn everything about it from him and his sister. Apparently, we really aren't worried about the enemy attacking here, and so this is all just a ploy to get her to tell him about herself some more. Because he's, you know, hashtag interested and single. I guess he likes girls in uniform more than girls from his society that already believe what he believes. There's also apparently no threat that she might lie and feed him false information about the state because, again, this is good Christian novel, and the main characters are not allowed to do anything bad, it seems. So Aerie tells Exton that she didn't get into military academy. Exton says Aerie wouldn't have liked it anyway, which causes her to flip out at him. Exton explains to Aerie that the military academy is all about following orders, and Aerie is surprised by that somehow. She is also surprised that being in the military may somehow mean that she has to kill people at some point. I don't know what she thought the military of a dictatorship was if it wasn't following orders and possibly killing people. Maybe summer camp and more pranks? I don't really know. It doesn't really say what her expectations were, other than that she thought she was going to be a medic. But even medics see violence. Like, medic implies you're on a battlefield, which means there's war. What did she think she was getting into? Aries says that the only reason that she wanted to join the military anyway was to prove to her family that she wasn't weak. Still, she was only going to work in medicine, so I'm not really sure how those two ideas connect or translate. She could have worked in medicine outside of the military. Also, this obviously wasn't a strong motivator since she put so little effort into this. She wouldn't even shine her shoes or comb her hair for her graduation ceremony. So Aerie then explains that she was rejected from military academy because she defied state orders. Apparently, the URS deals with acts of defiance among their ranks the same way that one would a rejection from college. Aerie should be panicking internally from her identity with the state being severed, just how offensive it was for her to do what she did. And this also could have worked so much for her character if she'd said that she did botany studies instead for the betterment of the state and was totally blindsided by her will to help the state versus obey, that she didn't realize what a snafu it was for her to do that. And then she's like, oh no, I displeased the state. But we never have her actually being regretful or being ashamed of herself or reflecting on how she disappointed the state or how she defied the state, which is unfortunate. As Exton gets up to leave, Aerie says he owes her information too, but he'll give that to her another time. Aerie says, what if I'm here to spy on you though? And he's like, don't worry about it. You'll be supervised. There will be no problems. Bro, that doesn't mean that she's not gonna spy on you. You've got the puppy boy vision where you're just into this girl. You need to look at yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself. You're putting everyone on the space station in danger, my dude. I don't know how he didn't take that question about her being a spy more suspiciously or seriously. Someone openly questioning why they're being trusted feels like fishing for information so they can undermine you. However, even Exton knows there's nothing to worry about in this novel. There's no consequences or anything, so he doesn't have any doubt about Aerie's intentions for a second. Also, for some reason, Exton wants to convince Aerie that he's not a monster. I don't know why he thinks he's a monster, because he thinks the URS is a monster. So this more feels like some sort of romance trope that really doesn't fit with Exton, since he thinks he's the good guy against the URS. It would make sense for him to believe that he could convert people to the cause, but he'd already expressed how he thinks people can't change. So it seems odd that he is like, okay, I'm going to convince her that I'm not a monster as well. Also, oddly enough, he'd shown more compassion to this one person than he had shown to his own sister and brother-in-law / best friend for this entire novel. If he's not being nicer to her because he wants to bet her, I couldn't give you another reason for the entire character change and squishiness in this man. So Exton leaves and is sitting on his usual window perch looking out at space. His sister comes in to tell him about a couple eligible bachelorettes that would like to meet him, and Exton says, ew, don't send me children, when they are all literally the same age as Aerie. It's kind of a bizarre response. Exton then tells Emery that she will be Aerie's babysitter to teach her about the ship, proving that he shouldn't be captain because now you've got somebody who is the director of the ship undermining the security of the ship and everybody's safety. Because Exton has a thing for the state, this girl from the state. His little attraction is about to put the entire ship in danger if Aerie turns out to be a spy for the URS. Was it worth it to have that little crush? Again, no tension because nothing bad will happen, and this book never makes you think that anything bad is going to happen between either of these characters because Aerie is already defying the state from the moment that we meet her. Emery then calls Exton out on having a crush and is concerned that Aerie will hurt him. Exton's only response is, geez, sis, I thought you wanted me to find love, and now you don't? Or is this just about you throwing women at me who want something from me? How? How is it that every woman on this ship has ill intentions, but not Aerie, a member of the enemy of the entire space station existence? I guess we can confirm that Exton only wants women who don't want him or are dangerous to him. He's got a danger girl thing. Emery reminds Exton that liking Aerie is dangerous, but that doesn't stop Exton from saying, doesn't matter, the will of the D is too strong. Yet, he also says, duty comes first, don't worry about it. He's lying. His actions say he's lying. It doesn't really matter. Emery then leaves and introduces herself to Aerie. They start talking about how Emery just got married, and Aerie calls that barbaric. Aerie also has more fear and respect for Emery than she did for Exton. Maybe that's because she can't make Emery fall in love with her, but I think it has more to do with Emery also being a girl boss. So Aerie's Eri is over here feeling sorry for herself and that no one cares about her. She specifically insults her dad, who obviously saved her from re-education camp in the opening scene and constantly hid her wrongdoings, but that's not enough apparently. Eri is shown to her first training session for what she'll be doing on the ship. While with Emery, she says that the next time she fights Exton, she'll make sure to kill him. Apparently saying that you're gonna kill the captain isn't sus because nobody skips a beat. Then Eri is shown to a room and it's amazing to her. She's gonna get her own room, which she never had back in the URS, and it's pretty much bigger than her room back in the URS. We are told here that very few ever defy the URS, and that those who do often go or always go to re-education camps. Yet we saw Eri not go, and her father said that it didn't work right to the council, which means that he was lying, which means all of them know that he was lying, and I don't know why they didn't throw him also in re-education camp for literally lying to their faces about his daughter to save her from the state. The URS is not a real dictatorship. Eri settles in before her and Emery talk about how the dictatorship can't run hospitals or food or anything, but the churches in the dictatorship could. Also, the state banned religion because the state is supposed to be your only family and your god. Emery learns that Exton and Emery are siblings just before Emery tells Eri that Exton has a crush on her. Because it seems like a great idea to gossip about the captain of the ship to a possible spy. I guess that would only matter if there were stakes involved in the story. More information sharing ensues, and Eri gets her assigned a job, so they get moving. Back over with Exton, he and Tyler are on the command bridge when Emery brings Eri in. Reunited, they're both horny for each other. They got a call from Exton's aunt saying the URS has changed their communication method and that they learned this through a leaker that they have in comms. I can't say that I'm surprised here that there is a leaker in comms when they literally put Eri in comms after her blatant disobedience. Yes, all of your defects are going to be in comms, and then that's like the worst place for them to be because they're going to block communications and they're going to go and spread other things to the outsiders. Exton and Emery wonder why Eri won't just join and think that maybe it's pride, even though she doesn't really have pride in the URS. Tyler's over here being buddies with Eri immediately and telling her how he met Emery. Exton challenges Eri to a rematch, and the two of them bicker while Eri claims that she won because she's a girl boss and states that if they got into a fight again, she would kill him. Again, and nobody says anything again. Like, they're just, here's all of this information about our ship. Oh, you're gonna kill me? That's fine. Nothing suspicious here. I, for one, am glad that everyone just ignores the threats from this agent of the state. Eri and Emery are now bickering about whether Eri is a child or not. Eri is sent off to do her duties, which is housekeeping with other women. She meets Alice, a girl her age, and Olga, her overseer. Olga teaches Eri that cleaning is a way that you show somebody you love them. Also, Eri admits that she spent most of her time in regular academy daydreaming. As the story went on, I had a hard time understanding how she even thought that she'd get into military academy if not for nepotism, and that she had to thank her dad for a lot of things. There's a statement in here about how all the URS cares about is following orders, and anyone can follow orders, but clearly Eri failed at that too. Then there's talk about how the Ecclesia was an underground movement that worshipped God as a creator of all things. Olga says, true love both casts out fear while still fearing the right things. Eri is confused. Olga refuses to elaborate. We never learn what that means. After a hard day of work, Eri passes out on her bed, rethinking her life and the URS, and also how she can't join the rebels because they have nukes and only make life good at the expense of others. But apparently the URS doesn't make life good at the expense of others. Exton shows up and gives Eri her cat back. The two get heated and handsy. Then this breaks into a discussion of fair versus equal and how they're not the same thing, and the URS uses language to confuse people, and the URS fights with emotions, not facts. Exton then goes emo, asking if Eri had ever wished for death before, because things can be worse than death. He talks about how his father was killed by the URS and then his mother died of loneliness, and he still will not forgive those who destroyed his family. Exton tells Eri that he's going to attack the URS and doesn't trust her. Kinda sucks that you've been showing her all of the secrets of your ship if you don't trust her. Though then he immediately follows that up with, but I want to. we know you do, bud. They kiss and think of how much they want each other but shouldn't. He leaves hastily as he has a meeting. He keeps thinking about how that was probably a mistake to do, kissing the enemy, but he also liked it. But also, He knows there's a monster inside of him, and he needs to be careful. I wish we had seen this monster by now, so that we could see what he was trying to say. Hey, I want to show her that I'm not a monster, but I'm actually a monster. And it's, again, it just feels like the trope of like this bad boy, but it's not actually playing out in this character. Eri wakes up late for work and thinking about that kiss that she had with Exton. She's also feeling really bad because she thinks that she slept in past her work time. But Emery shows up and tells Eri not to worry about sleeping in because there are no consequences. I mean, it's her day off, so nobody is ever in trouble in this book. Also, Emery invites Eri down to the canteen for breakfast. While hanging out, Eri learns that there is a space garden, and Emery is surprised that Eri doesn't think it's stupid. Eri learns that the true target for their rebel group isn't Dictator Osgood, but her own father, Lieutenant-in-Chief. Theoretically, this man's a strong leader, but I've seen how he is with Eri, so consider me doubtful. As she's shown the escape pods, Eri and Emery talk about how the URS wants loyalty and obedience, and maybe that's the big reason why dictatorship doesn't want religion, is because something bigger than people is determining what is right and wrong, and the state needs to be in charge of that. She also learns that the ship that they are on is stolen from the URS, but Exton doesn't consider it stolen because his father designed the ship. Eri learns the URS wanted to use the ship for nuclear weapons. Exton's father disagreed with that, and Eri just says, oh. And that pisses Emery off because she's kind of apparently expecting Eri to have more to say. Eri runs off, not wanting to deal with this drama. As you might expect, this leads Emery and Exton to bicker about how dare Emery let Eri run off. While everyone is apparently looking for her, she just went to the command bridge. Are you kidding that nobody saw her go in? She doesn't have a badge, so there's no lock on the door, and then she just let herself in and there's nobody there to be like, hey, Exton, that girl you're looking for is up here. Eri is reflecting on everything, what the URS is like, and remembering Exton saying, stay away from me if you want to remain enemies. Thinking of that, I'm not really sure why you would say this, especially if you're trying to create defects in the dictatorship or convince people to your side. Like, why would you want somebody to remain your enemy? Exton approaches Eri, only stopping to give a child a toy, and Eri thinks, wow, no one would have done that in the URS. Upon approaching her, Eri says that she wants answers, and Exton says he'll give them to her, but they need to go somewhere else first. Exton takes Eri to his room where they bicker, and Eri says that she wants the truth right now. Exton is saying that he won't tell her because she won't believe him. Sounds like he might be playing a game to get her alone in his room. Rate this tactic in the comments down below. Because he did say that he was going to tell her stuff, and now that they're in the room, no information for you. The two of them bicker until eventually they agree to stop lying, and the first order of business is telling the truth. Exton's like, I want to kiss you right now, and Eri responds with, I've never kissed anyone before, and Exton's like, good, because now I don't have to hunt down your previous suitors to kill them. Eri doesn't laugh. Exton says he's not joking. Eri doesn't run. You went to the bad boys, Eri? Is that what this is? I knew you weren't into Brock Shapiro. They make the deal that Exton will kiss her if she kisses him back. They exchange information about how their families were involved with the government, and Eri talks about botany. She admires how good of a person Exton is, and he's like, just because I accidentally help people doesn't make me a good person. Exton invites Eri to the annual crop picking week festival, and she accepts. People are gossiping about the two of them spending time together, and now she's thinking about how she could join the rebels, but it would be weird to live somewhere separate from everything she was used to growing up with. Exton prompts Eri with, I could ruin you, before the two head off and dance for the night festival. After escaping the dance party, Exton shows Eri the fighter jets that they have, and she asks about Menace. Turns out Menace, which was a corporation, a rebel group, something like that, they were manufacturing arms and selling them to a customer base that was killing each other, so the business kind of folded. Exton tells Eri that he wanted her since the first moment that he saw her, and that forgiveness is also really hard. The two return to his bedroom and fall asleep together. Eventually, a ship is coming their way, and it's a URS ship, and they are being attacked. Eri gets mad that missiles were used because she was told that there were no bombs on the ship. She runs away and hides in the Biovid garden. Emery finds her, and the two of them talk, with Emery sharing how their father was killed by St. Cloud. You've also got Emery saying, you can't be weak if you're gonna marry my brother. Can we take a pause on this for a second to recognize that Eri has been on the ship for less than 2 weeks and they're already talking about marriage? To an enemy? Still, because of this, Aerie feels the need to come clean about her being the daughter of St. Cloud. This makes Emery break down because we trusted you. Aerie runs and discovers the memory tree is still alive in the garden. Apparently earlier when Exton told her that the memory tree was dead, it was just to test her to see if she would still accept him and his apology if her beloved tree was gone. Aerie's heart is just taken aback. But they have to tell Exton who Aerie really is and send her back to Earth where she belongs, even after showing her all of the secrets of the ship. Like, I would feel like you can't send her back now. There are like two options here. She's now a defector, so she gets to stay with you, or she knows all of the secrets of your thing, so you really can't send her back to the URS anyway, because she'll just tell your enemy all of the secrets she learned while she was under your wing. Like, why would you be like, oh, we know who you are now, so now we have to send you back? You knew that she was from the dictatorship. It shouldn't matter who she's related to. You showed her everything about the ship. Meanwhile, Exton's having a meeting with St. Cloud dressed as Chainsword's ghost. This is where he learns that Aerie is St. Cloud's daughter and she must go back. St. Cloud's threatening to nuke their settlement if she doesn't get given back. Plus, she doesn't belong with the rebels, in Exton's words. As Exton tries to put Aerie in an escape pod, Girlboss kicks him in the side. After the two of them fight and apologize, they exchange I love yous and didn't you want me to love you at your worst? Love me at mine. Exton uses kisses to distract Aerie so that he can back her into his room and lock her in. I'm not really sure the logistics of locking someone in a bedroom from the outside, but that's what's happening here. With her newfound time, Aerie cleans the room with the power of love and boredom. Then, she's reading books like Lord of the Rings and Fahrenheit 451. This feels like the same kind of coding as like when Grady Hendrix used Ayn Rand and Nazis to try to evil code the villains. Sometimes it's just like when there's stuff in books that you're like, this is clearly the author saying like these are the good guys, because of personal musical taste or personal book taste, it's kind of just like, but why? Meanwhile, Exton's over at the memory tree in pain and sorrow and wondering what he should do with Aerie. Reverend Thorne appears to say, lol, if your suffering is that bad, why don't you just marry her already so that you can sustain your suffering for the rest of your life? Hashtag Facebook Boomer Memes Part 2. Tyler tells Exton not to fear love, and he's only feeling so much pain and suffering about Aerie because she makes him happy. Also, FYI, they're throwing a baby shower because Emery and Tyler are already pregnant. How do they know? They got married less than 2 weeks ago. Is this implying that they were doing things before the wedding, or everything is just moving so fast in this story for the amount of time that's passing? Exton again meets with St. Cloud over comms, and they discuss whether St. Cloud loves his daughter. St. Cloud admits to having forging papers for his daughter to stay out of trouble, so she needs to come back so that neither of them get in trouble. Exton doesn't believe that the URS has any mercy and will not spare Aerie, so he hangs up. He randomly walks by his sister and congratulates her for being pregnant. She tells him to give Aerie another chance, and Exton's like, yeah, okay, sis. You're absolutely right. Exton returns to the bedroom where Aerie is sleeping in and sits down beside her. Instead of dealing with the drama of the possible bombing of their rebel settlement, he gets a blanket and sleeps beside her. When he wakes up, Aerie turns to him and is like, Exton, I will make a deal with you. I will love you if you love me. And Exton takes a moment to be offended by saying, you don't make deals in relationships. I'm pretty sure that that is the deal that you make in a loyal relationship, but okay. So now he's going to give Aerie back to St. Cloud so the settlement isn't bombed. Aerie doesn't care about the people who are in danger because she wants to stay. She is fighting him to stay no matter what he says. Exton tries to force her out by saying, I hate you and I don't want you to be here. Aerie disregards that. The two of them end up having a quick throwdown where Exton throws Aerie onto the bed and pins her there, demanding that she relent. He forces her to give up and she finally agrees before he leaves. She remains in his bed, sobbing about how much she doesn't want to go. Emery comes into the room to console her and Aerie says goodbye. Aerie asks them to take care of her cat for her. They pray to God for safety and guidance, and then it's off to meet St. Cloud. Instead of sending Aerie off in an escape pod like previously talked about, they They meet the dad in Canada somewhere. Of course, they get ambushed. Aerie passes out, and now there's the sudden serum being introduced that makes Aerie forget the last 6 weeks specifically. Exton escapes the ambush, but also passes out. When he wakes up, he's being tended to by Aerie's mother, who apparently isn't dead. Aerie then wakes up in a medical ward in the URS with Brock at her bedside, saying that she had a seizure and fell during a climbing exercise. He also tells her that she should come and meet his parents. Seems like super appropriate timing to be like, let's take our relationship to the next level, huh? Aerie, you're in the hospital. You've only been missing for 2 weeks, but how about we tie this knot? After that, Brock leaves Aerie, and Aerie thinks about how something seems off. She's vague. She vaguely remembers something about her life, but then falls asleep. And that is the end of book 1. How you doing, guys? Looking forward to your comments. So, starting with the characters of this book, Exton felt kind of like a saggy, too edgy emo sock that you'd expect in Christian fiction. He has no depth, no charisma, no leadership at all. And you'd think being the captain of a pirate ship, he'd have some sort of presence about him, but his sister steps on him in front of everyone. He's supposed to be waging this war against this huge dictatorship in control of the United States, but all he does to get back at them is steal a tree from the nuclear poisoned surface. He comes off like a teenager doing pranks rather than a competent leader trying to build a new country or a new home, and even puts the entire crew at risk by falling head over heels for this girl that he met 3 days ago. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. In fact, I have a country boy myself who falls in love immediately with a city girl the first time that he sees her, though he admits immediately that he wants to make that woman his wife. But in this, Exton doesn't do that. He doesn't really acknowledge that, hey, I am head over heels for this girl. It is ridiculous. I need to contain myself. This is a problem, which actually would have been a very interesting inner conflict from Exton's point of view, is knowing he was so drastically attracted to this person, knowing that he was drawn to this person, and knowing that he couldn't be because she was the enemy, and having to fight that and also work within his own ethical and moral frameworks and what he was willing to do, like putting his colony at risk for his feelings for this outsider. Exton also should have had some kind of skills or something about him that make him strong, competent, and tell us why people would follow him. Instead, he doesn't have any of those either. It would have been a great contrast if he actually was a determined, powerful leader who would willingly sacrifice his safety for that of the ship and the mission, but instead he'll ruin everything over this woman that he doesn't even know. It made me wonder why anyone followed him on the ship and why they hadn't had a mutiny yet against him. Next, you have Aerie, who is supposed to be the daughter of the second in command of a dictatorship, grew up under a dictatorship, supposedly the foil to Exton. But she's not really. She should have been clean-cut, proper, actively working for the dictatorship with the fear of what Exton really was brainwashed into her. Fight him to the death like you think he's going to kill you, but there was nothing built in the background to really make Aerie think that she was ever in danger. She didn't even have rumors floating around in her head, even though we did have earlier chapters of how terrible Captain Chainsword was. And Aerie is so bad that she openly says that she didn't realize that defying the state would hurt her chances to get into the military. How is that possible? How do you live in a dictatorship all of your life and not only think freely and have free choice, but think that there are no consequences to defying the state openly and then arguing with them? Oh, because it's not a real dictatorship, and that's the real problem here with the stakes of this piece. I wish that they had more contrast between the dictatorship devotee meeting the rough and loose space pirate who's got a bone to pick or a chip on his shoulder against that dictatorship, but we got neither of those things. The antagonist is more St. Cloud than Osgood, who barely shows up at all. But how is this man second in command while constantly breaking the rules and laws of the place that he maintains? He did paperwork constantly, hiding his daughter's misbehavior, argued with the state about putting his daughter into re-education after what I would have thought would have been a big deal, not only defying state orders after graduation, but the second in command of the state's daughter defying orders. That shows an intrinsic problem with the leadership of the dictatorship. And then he continues to lie on her behalf in the end. How has the state not caught on to him yet? How has he not been punished? How can he so obviously defy the state practices and even speak out against re-education and nothing happens to him? There's genuinely not really any strong character in this book, and I don't know why. The side characters are mostly negligible, with very little personality of their own, aside from rooting for the two main characters to get together even when it's inappropriate. There's just nothing to any of them, no character growth, because they never had any character or because they never had much character at all. I don't know if it's a lack of ability or a lack of compassion or a desire to not actually have character conflict, because in a situation like this, you would have actual conflict. But here, everything is solved immediately and it's fine. The bickering is shallow, but there is no forcing someone out of brainwashing. It just is the girl boss problem. I don't know how we ended up with girl bosses everywhere, including in Christian YA sci-fi fantasy romance, but here we are. Emery and Aerie are both always on top of Exton when it comes to power, confidence, ability, and insult, and I'm so sick of reading female authors writing against male characters so viciously, where it's always insulting, it's always denigrating, it's always putting the males down and putting the females on top, and never giving the females any real weaknesses. It's not empowering to make your female characters unbelievably strong or insulting at the male characters, but both Tyler and Exton are pathetic when pit with Emery and Aerie, and they know it. Can we stop demeaning male characters all across the board and show some love sometimes, somewhere, with some adoration? I'm having flashbacks now to Guns and Smoke, where all Bonnie and the cast did was deride Jesse. Why are we doing this? You've got that right. I'm calling you out if your characters all dunk on your male characters. It's sickening. For me, at this point, it's sickening and annoying. Give them a chance to shine over the female characters in something, somewhere, especially where it makes sense. I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't have female characters deriding male characters wherever. It's just like the girl boss situation specifically is annoying me, and I'm kind of tired of it. But I'll just keep bringing it up, and then you can choose what to do with it. Not just the above reasons, though, but Aerie is not only described as smaller than Exton, but he's a space pirate, while she barely just graduated school. So also somehow graduated at 17, being an air battle specialist, which is admitted in the book, while wanting to focus on botany and medical. Why does she have to be good at everything? How is she a better fighter than him in every way, and yet his sister can take Aerie down? Really? Pass. The love timeline. Oh no. So I don't know how we got into the discussion of marriage and children in this book in less than 2 weeks. Exton fell for this chick like 2 days in, while swatting off every other female who ever approached him as trying to get something from him. But then Aerie was ready to turn on her entire nation, family, and upbringing within 2 weeks of meeting this man. I'd say it appears the dictatorship did not do such a well job at brainwashing if all it takes is a bit of D to start a revolution, if you know what I mean. I mean, I guess them rebels got the power of D, and that's all that they need in order to create a free state. I'm not a leader or anything, so, you know, I don't know about breaking the conditioning. Then you've got how the book opens with the marriage of Tyler and Emery, and how they are already knowing, and how they already know that they're pregnant within 2 weeks of that. I guess they're really going at it or something, or they got tech for that. I don't really know. It's all implications on how they know and how they got that pregnant that fast. The speed of the proposal and the casual talk of marriage was just bizarre, though, so I wanted to bring that up. World building. The world building just wasn't there to really express what the United States had become, why everything was stationed in New York. Was the majority of the United States annexed, or had stuff been moved from DC to New York, and why? Not to mention that we're told in the URS the state is your family. You're trained not to refer to your father and mother as such, as the only familial bond that you should have is with the state. However, everyone that we see from the URS uses familial language when referring to family. Even the second in command, St. Cloud, freely and without pause to think, uses the word daughter. This shows either a lack of ability to commit to the world, or someone didn't edit to make sure that this didn't happen within the context of the book to make me believe in the URS. It's so bizarre to set up this world and claim this high level of lying in order to control people like Aerie, but then she's never at the disadvantage of actually believing the lies of the state. She never believes the URS is in the right, and this, to me, reads more like an inability on the author's part to write a perspective that they don't agree with believably. We're told that the state deliberately didn't obliterate religion, but only outlawed it. Why? How does Eri even have a concept of religion based on the circumstances she grew up under? So many little things were overlooked for this religious space pirate thing, that if you're going to write a dictatorship, balls to the wallet and follow through, otherwise there is no point to it because none of your rules matter. The dictatorship doesn't exist. Which leads me into the next section, which is ideology over story. The biggest problem I saw with this story is that it felt like the author was so focused on sticking to personal principles, beliefs, and ideology that she didn't really allow her characters to be honest within their own situation and who they were. Instead, dialogue was forced to push a political agenda. The dictatorship was never allowed to be as bad as it actually should have been because it felt like the author was so uncompassionate and unwilling to allow someone opposing her viewpoints to be competent and strong, so they ended up as a wet fish. And we see this all over the place with different sorts of ideologically driven storytelling. This is a problem with every kind of ideological writing. Right-wing personalities complain about the left shoving ideology into fiction and making cringe and stuff that just creates straw mans and cardboard cutout villains. But you have the right wing doing the same thing to the left wing. From stuff like this, it's very clear that there's an inflexibility not only in expressing characters that are different from you ideologically, but in understanding and showing compassion and understanding to someone who might live differently than you. Eri could have been expressed as a hardcore comrade, loyal to the state and slowly pulled out of it by Exton and Emery and the crew. But instead, she was never truly in it and always had dreams of freedom. Even the second-in-command dictator didn't act like a dictator. This kind of political, ideologically driven story is hard to read from any political side. Yes, writing and stories have themes in them, but putting ideology above story and character will always make your story suffer because it's not being honest to character interpretations, to character experiences, to how characters are. And then you come off like you're an after-school special or a propaganda machine. As further evidence, Exton is so incompetent, it even says that he doesn't know how to lie. Bro, he taunts a dictatorship on a daily basis while wearing a costume of his father's face. But this shows just a failure in his characterization. You can't have your good guy character do even one thing wrong because it breaks the ideology and any support he'd be allowed to have. Only perfectionism is allowed here, and that's not how real people are. Dialogue. The dialogue in this book often fulfilled one of three purposes: exposition dumping to the reader, stating a messaging or generic romance stuff like "I could ruin you," and bickering in an attempt to create tension. I don't know. There wasn't much character revealed through dialogue, but I guess that's only because there was so very little in the way of characterization, period. Exposition as dialogue is rarely effective for much of anything, but it often is used to info dump, and when you do this, you lose character voice for what then becomes the narrator talking through the character. Most of the dialogue contained what felt like messaging was nonsensical, because Exton would talk about things that we didn't even see the URS doing, or that they were completely contrary to what Eri was doing. And then you have stuff like, cleaning is how you show love and you'll learn what love and fear are later, dearie. No, I'm not telling you what that means. You'll just figure it out on your own. Also, a note on bickering, it doesn't really create tension. It doesn't even seem like real fighting. Generally, it just, for me, when I'm reading, it comes off as annoying. I ran into this in Shadow of the Conqueror too, where the author felt the need to do little quippy back and forths that lacked any character depth or revelations and only proved to annoy me and fill page numbers. Because there was no character there, it was just meh, 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 meh. Dialogue is a great way to show character and background, but not when it's used like this. Not to mention, sometimes they'd get into dialogue just to express political points, and they'd either end up arguing opposite of what they had meant to, or they'd switch what they meant mid-argument in order to hit a certain point. So everything felt secondary to the messaging of the piece. Tension and follow-through. If it's not already obvious, let me exemplify the problem with the inconsistencies here. There's a moment when Eri is judging Exton for probably being a murderer. Meanwhile, she openly says multiple times that she will kill Exton the next chance that she gets, which is another girl boss symptom, by the way. She acted as if she'd be disgusted if she had to kill anybody in the battlefield after she joined the military academy, but she is fine gloating about murdering Exton. Not valuing life is not a boss move. It shows you're shallow, and I'm sick of seeing it constantly in supposedly strong characters that there's no meaning in killing. While they're supposedly good guys, there's no tension in this book because there's no follow through on who any of these characters are supposed to be or the drama of any of the situation. You want me to believe that the dictatorship is bad? Then make the characters look competent. Yet every citizen that we see is openly ready to defy the state. Wait until we get to book 2 and it gets even worse. Additionally, it makes no sense to pretend that Aerie is not the enemy of Emery and Exton. Showing her the entire ship and then sending her back is not only a mistake, it is insanely stupid. But it's done because the characters know that nothing is going to happen to them because the author won't let anything bad happen. This is the problem with a lot of modern writers, where they are uncomfortable with creating problems and letting them live in a bubble. They're uncomfortable with letting characters that are main characters do bad things to each other and maybe making the reader not like them for one reason or another and making them have to redeem themselves actually. Constantly, we're introduced to problem and immediate solution. Tell me, why would the captain of a rebel ship keep taunting a powerful dictatorship when he doesn't have plans to attack, doesn't have any weapons, and is completely vulnerable by virtue of having a settlement that he can't protect? Because that's what this story comes down to, is the dictatorship knows where a settlement is, they have weapons, the settlement doesn't have weapons, and the dictatorship threatens to bomb it. Like, why are you bringing attention to yourself when you don't have any way to fight against this dictatorship? Why steal that tree? Because there are no actual consequences and there's no tension here. Nothing here matters, and that's the problem with the writing in this story. Ending note. For me, this book felt like it was talking only to people who already understand and agree with whatever perspective the author has religiously and politically. Because it didn't really explain anything, the value of anything. And you see that especially with Olga expressing something that felt religious, but then never actually explaining what that meant to that character. So that felt like talking within a niche audience that already knows what exactly you're talking about. All I ask of any author is to please keep politically, ideologically driven pieces out of fiction. Write your themes, but forcing propaganda down my throat is just not something that I enjoy. I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm just saying that I will critique it if that's what comes across my dashboard when I'm reading. But forcing propaganda down my throat consistently, regardless of what political wing it is, I'm sick to my stomach of people writing poorly with no respect for the craft, but here, take my political opinions as it pretends to be entertainment. No. But with that said, those are my thoughts on The Height of Perdition. Check it out for yourself if you'd like a little more context of how the story flows. I would love to hear yours. Have a great weekend, and don't die. Hello, boomers! My name is Yanananana. How are you feeling today? In case you didn't know, I'm a YouTuber from Nide, a small town in eastern Ukraine. My family has never really understood what I do in the woods, but all I've ever wanted is to make a better life for us all. Papa always comes home from the mines dirty, angry, and tired. It's a necessary evil to do your job and be in a place that you don't want to be. But I've never wanted to spend my life doing exactly what was necessary of me. Everything changed for me when a couple of Americans appeared at my door. They said they wanted to sponsor my channel and handed me military-grade explosives. Can you believe it? Military-grade. The lights will be incredible going forward. With this help, my videos will be next level. I just hope they are as they say, and this isn't some kind of trick. I mean, what would there be to gain? Boris says people are simple. Everything comes down to money and power. And Alex tells me ignorance will not save me from trouble. I understand where they are coming from, but I do not like to think that way. There is more to life than a cruel of superficial goods, hatred, and destruction. Anyway, I do not like where this video is going, so I will see you on the explosives field. Boom, boom, boom. Salute.